The darkened sky stretched over the horizon with distant stars barely visible through the dim veil of the night. A tense, almost electric stillness hung in the air. People on Earth looked up, their faces illuminated by the eerie glow of thousands of alien ships hovering in low orbit. The vast alien fleet seemed to eclipse the heavens, a sight both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Each ship was a behemoth of cold metal and gleaming weaponry, their angular shapes unlike anything humanity had ever seen. These vessels were gargantuan, towering over Earth's cities like silent harbingers of doom. Energy crackled between their spires as they hovered menacingly, waiting. The air buzzed with the vibration of their engines, though no sound reached the ground. The sheer size and number of the fleet created an overwhelming sense of dread among the people watching below. Every human knew that this was it. The long-dreaded invasion had begun. For years, Earth had monitored distant signals and had seen signs of activity from an alien species, but no one had anticipated the scale of the fleet now looming above. The knowledge that they had been watched, that the end was approaching, had prepared humanity somewhat, but nothing could truly brace them for the reality they were now facing. The aliens had come, and they weren't here to negotiate. Far above the atmosphere, aboard the flagship of the invaders, a cold, calculating figure stood at the heart of the bridge. High Commander Valthor gazed down upon Earth with disdain. To him, this planet was insignificant, a mere stepping stone in his empire's relentless expansion. Earth's species primitive, short-lived, barely capable of leaving their own solar system did not warrant much concern. The humans had sent messages, of course, some pleading, some warning, but to Valthor, they were all laughable. The humans had dared to broadcast what they called a final warning as if they had the power to defend themselves. Foolish creatures, Valthor muttered to his second-in-command, a smaller, reptilian being who stood nearby. They've barely scratched the surface of their own technological potential, yet they think they can threaten us. The commander's words were met with sycophantic laughter from the alien officers around him. The conquest of Earth was expected to be easy and insignificant skirmish before moving on to the true challenges of the galaxy. The invasion fleet comprised thousands of warships, each equipped with enough firepower to decimate entire continents. Against such a force, Earth's paltry defenses were nothing more than insects waiting to be crushed underfoot. Valthor's empire had swept through countless systems, subjugating or eradicating any species that stood in its way. Their domination was swift and ruthless, each conquest adding to the wealth and might of their imperial hold. To Valthor, humanity was just another in a long list of civilizations that had failed to recognize their insignificance. He wasn't worried. Why should he be? Earth's leaders had shown nothing but desperation in their transmissions, begging for peace, or, in the case of their final warning, trying to feign strength they didn't possess. On the ground, Earth's highest-ranking military officers gathered in command centers deep underground, reviewing the situation in silence. General Morgan, the man in charge of Earth's defense, stood motionless as the latest satellite feeds displayed the massive fleet above. His face was stern, his features betraying nothing, but inside a quiet tension gnawed at him. Earth had been preparing for this moment ever since the first alien signals had been detected. Still, the sheer scale of the threat made even the most hardened leaders hesitate. The general glanced at his team of advisors, all equally grim-faced. The options were limited. Earth's defenses, while formidable by human standards, were nothing compared to the power that hung above them. Conventional weapons would do little more than irritate the invaders. The only hope lay in the strategy they had devised months ago the weapon Earth had kept hidden, even from its own people. The final warning sent to the aliens hadn't been empty words, but whether it would be enough remained to be seen. General Morgan allowed himself a brief moment to contemplate the situation. They had issued a simple ultimatum: leave or face annihilation. The transmission had been sent in every major language, and yet the silence in response from the alien fleet had been deafening. There was nothing left to say. The aliens had chosen not to heed the warning, just as Earth had expected. "Are we ready?" Morgan asked, his voice a low growl as he turned to one of his senior officers. We are, sir. All systems are prepped. We await your command, Morgan nodded, his eyes hardening with resolve. There was no going back now. Humanity had one chance, and they had put everything into ensuring it would be enough. Good. We'll wait for their first move. The alien ships hung poised to strike. In the dead of night, the streets of Earth's cities emptied as people sought shelter, huddling together in their homes, or in deep underground bunkers designed for this very scenario. The planet collectively held its breath, aware that the next few moments could decide their fate. Up in the sky, the alien fleet's massive weapons began to hum with energy, preparing for the first salvo. Valthor watched with a smug smile as the targeting systems locked onto key human cities: New York, London, Moscow, Beijing. His finger hovered over the command to fire. There was no reason to delay. This battle was already won in his mind. Begin the bombardment, he said coolly, giving the order. The alien fleet, confident in their superiority, had no reason to suspect otherwise. From their vantage point, Earth was a backwater planet, defenseless and helpless in the face of their overwhelming force. There was no reason to take precautions. No reason to think that humanity might have a trump card. No reason to believe that their final warning had been anything more than desperate bluffing. As the alien weapons powered up, ready to unleash their wrath upon the surface of Earth, the planet below seemed eerily calm. The final warning was broadcast across every available frequency, carried on waves of static that reverberated through the cold vacuum of space. Earth's message, translated into the alien language, was clear and unwavering: this is your last chance. Leave now or face destruction. The voice on the transmission was calm, authoritative, yet carried a weight that seemed impossible for a species the aliens considered so primitive. Commander Valthor sat in his command chair aboard the flagship, watching the incoming message. It was played back on one of the central screens, the human's language and tone translated instantly by the fleet's systems. The words might as well have been a child's tantrum for all the seriousness they garnered. Around the command bridge, officers exchanged glances and chuckles, mocking the human attempt to sound imposing. Destruction, Valthor muttered, a grin creeping across his face. These creatures truly have no understanding of what stands before them. The fleet had completed its tactical analysis of Earth's defense capabilities, and the findings were laughable. Earth's military might was practically non-existent compared to the armadas the Empire usually encountered. The few orbital defense stations that circled the planet were no more than antiquated relics. The energy signatures detected on the surface were similarly outdated primitive nuclear weapons, kinetic armaments, nothing remotely capable of posing a threat to the Empire's technology. The humans had called this a final warning, but to Valthor, it was a bluff, and a weak one at that. He reclined back into his seat and waved a hand dismissively. Prepare the primary weapon systems? Let's end this farce. The officers around him nodded and got to work, though one of the younger officers hesitated, his brow furrowing as he studied the incoming data. Commander, with all due respect, there is something unusual in the energy readings near Earth's poles. It might warrant enough. Valthor interrupted, his voice laced with impatience. You waste your breath on trivialities. The humans have nothing. Their so-called final warning is an empty threat from a cornered beast. The junior officer snapped his mouth shut, bowing his head in obedience, though a trace of doubt lingered in his eyes. Valthor noticed none of it. His focus was entirely on the spectacle of destruction about to unfold. Earth's leaders had dared to stand against the Empire, and now they would learn their place. On the surface, tension rippled across the planet. Major cities had fallen eerily silent as humanity waited for the inevitable. From New York to Tokyo, skyscrapers stood like tombstones, with their windows dark and streets empty. Sirens wailed in the distance, warning citizens to seek shelter. Emergency broadcasts flashed across televisions and smartphones, instructing everyone to remain calm. Beneath this forced sense of order, though, panic simmered. Deep underground in one of Earth's most secure bunkers, General Morgan watched the transmission feed in silence. He had seen the final warning sent out, seen the faces of Earth's leaders grimly approve the message, and now all that was left was to wait. He turned toward the control console before him. where a grid of lights blinked softly, each one signifying readiness. His staff, the best and brightest Earth had to offer, sat tensely at their stations, fingers hovering over controls, ready for the next phase. "They're ignoring it," Morgan said flatly, his voice a gruff monotone. Just as we thought. His chief advisor, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s named Colonel Hawk, nodded. "They don't believe we have anything capable of stopping them, sir. It's clear they've done a full tactical analysis and found nothing significant." "Good," Morgan replied, almost under his breath. His eyes flicked back to the screen where the massive alien ships loomed. Let them believe that the world outside the bunker seemed frozen in time. In the dark, cold reaches of space, the alien fleet shifted slightly as they prepared to fire. Earth's last transmission had been sent, and now the humans watched with grim resolve as the first glimmers of energy began to gather around the alien ships. Thousands of them, each the size of a city, aimed their weapons at Earth's most populous regions. This was no small-scale attack, it was an extinction-level event. "They're targeting the major population centers," one of the analysts in the bunker murmured, scanning the data feeds. "London, Beijing, New York. They're going to hit us everywhere at once." Morgan didn't flinch. Let them. For months, Earth had prepared for this. Ever since humanity had intercepted the first alien signals, they had known this day would come. They had issued warnings, made attempts at peaceful negotiation, and even offered concessions, but it had been clear from the beginning that the alien empire had no interest in diplomacy. They were conquerors, and Earth was simply another conquest on their path to domination. But humanity had one advantage: the element of surprise. Morgan knew that, by all appearances, Earth looked defenseless. Even the alien scans had shown as much. They had no reason to suspect what lay hidden beneath the surface. Back in orbit, the alien fleet reached full charge. Brilliant beams of energy, like the birth of new stars, lit up the sky as the ships prepared to unleash their fury. The first wave of weapons locked onto Earth's cities, ready to reduce them to smoldering craters. Yet, for all their advanced technology and overwhelming firepower, they had made one fatal error: they had underestimated humanity's ingenuity. From the moment the first alien warships had entered Earth's solar system, humanity had been preparing for this precise moment. General Morgan glanced at the countdown on his display. The numbers ticked down steadily, matching the charging sequence of the alien fleet. He nodded to Colonel Hawk, and she keyed in a set of commands on her terminal. The lights on the control grid blinked from yellow to red, indicating full operational status. "They've taken the bait," Morgan said. "It's time." In the heart of Earth's core, deep within facilities built in secret decades earlier, something stirred. It was an energy unlike anything the aliens had encountered, a technology developed in isolation, far from the prying eyes of the galactic community. Earth had long known it could not compete with the sheer numbers and advanced weaponry of the alien empire, so instead, it had focused on something else: developing a weapon that could turn the tide in an instant. The alien fleet's weapons charged to full capacity. The targeting systems locked. The first command to fire echoed across their command bridges, a chorus of destruction waiting to rain down upon the helpless planet below. Yet just before the order could be executed, the skies over Earth changed. Without warning, the atmosphere seemed to shimmer, as though reality itself had been altered. A vast, invisible network came to life, a defense grid powered by quantum energy, something beyond the understanding of even the most advanced alien civilizations. It activated in an instant, stretching across the planet like a protective shield. The energy blasts fired from the alien ships never reached the surface. They were absorbed, dissipated into nothingness, as if they had been mere sparks flickering in the wind. The alien command ships registered the anomaly immediately. Warning signals blared on every deck. Officers scrambled to make sense of what had just occurred, but it was too late. The shield wasn't just a defense mechanism, it was a weapon in disguise. From Earth's surface, energy pulses shot upward, invisible to the naked eye but devastating to the alien fleet. Within seconds, the pulses tore through the shields of the alien ships, rendering their advanced technology useless. The Empire's fleet, built on arrogance and overconfidence, had no countermeasures for this kind of attack. Their ships were reduced to powerless hulks, their systems fried, their once proud armada now nothing more than floating debris. High Commander Valthor stood frozen in disbelief as the fleet he had commanded for decades fell apart before his eyes. His mind raced to comprehend how this backwater planet could have developed something capable of nullifying their superiority so effortlessly. In the span of seconds, the situation had shifted from absolute domination to utter defeat. Their defense system, stammered one of Valthor's officers. We didn't detect anything like this in the scans. Valthor's eyes burned with fury. This isn't possible, but it was. The humans had issued their final warning, and now, as the alien ships began to drift lifelessly in orbit, it was clear that Earth had been anything but helpless. The countdown to destruction had been flipped, and the invaders had fallen into the trap. The alien fleet opened fire. Thousands of energy beams, missiles, and plasma cannons released their devastating payloads, streaking through space toward Earth. From the ground, it looked as if the sky had been set ablaze. Glowing projectiles hurtled downward, aimed at Earth's cities and population centers. The attack had begun, and for a brief moment, humanity held its collective breath, expecting the world to erupt in flames. But something entirely different happened. Just before the alien weapons reached their targets, the atmosphere above Earth flickered, like ripples across the surface of a pond. Then, in a split second, the incoming barrage vanished. The deadly energy beams were swallowed up by an invisible force, disintegrating before they could do any damage. Missiles, moments away from striking, were vaporized in midair, reduced to nothing more than sparks of light in the dark sky. For a heartbeat, there was silence and eerie calm that swept over the planet. In command centers deep below the surface, Earth's leaders watched their screens with tense anticipation. The massive alien fleet had unleashed its full fury, and yet not a single human life had been lost. Earth's shield had held. In the alien command ships, chaos erupted. High Commander Valthor stood in stunned silence, watching the view screen as his fleet's attack was rendered utterly ineffective. The shimmering force field around Earth had materialized seemingly from nowhere, deflecting the full power of their weapons as though it were nothing more than a gentle breeze. Alarms blared throughout the bridge, and panicked voices filled the air as alien officers scrambled to understand what had gone wrong. This isn't possible," one of the tactical officers stammered, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Our scans showed no defense systems capable of this." Valthor's face twisted with rage. "What is happening?" How could they? Before he could finish, another alarm cut through the confusion. This time, it wasn't the failure of their attack that triggered the warning, but something far more dangerous. Deep within the heart of the fleet, energy readings began to spike, except these readings weren't coming from the alien ships. They were coming from Earth. Suddenly, beams of pure, concentrated energy shot upward from the planet's surface, invisible to the naked eye but deadly to the alien vessels. These beams moved with terrifying precision, slicing through the alien fleet like knives through paper. Entire ships, once thought indestructible, were vaporized in an instant, reduced to nothing more than drifting fragments of metal. The ship's shields, designed to withstand the most advanced weapons in the galaxy, offered no protection. Within seconds, hundreds of warships were obliterated, their once proud forms transformed into debris. Valthor's eyes widened in horror as he realized what was happening. "They've lured us into a trap," he growled through clenched teeth. On the bridge, his officers scrambled to regain control of the situation, but it was too late. The human counterattack was relentless, methodical, and devastating. One by one, the alien ships were torn apart, their systems overwhelmed by a force they had never anticipated. Panic spread through the fleet as the realization sank in. Earth wasn't defenseless. Earth was prepared. The energy pulses emanating from the planet were unlike anything the alien empire had ever encountered. These weren't conventional weapons. They operated on principles the invaders couldn't comprehend. Earth's greatest minds had been working in secret for years, developing technology far beyond the empire's understanding. The human military had spent decades preparing for this moment, knowing that if they were ever to survive, they would need a weapon that could level the playing field. This was it. In the vastness of space, the alien fleet, which had once seemed invincible, was disintegrating before their very eyes. Massive warships, capable of destroying entire planets, crumbled as their hulls were breached, their power systems overloaded, and their engines torn apart by the invisible beams of energy. Thousands of ships, each one representing the pinnacle of alien technology, were now nothing more than burning wreckage drifting helplessly above Earth. Within the alien flagship, the once confident and arrogant officers now stared at their monitors in disbelief. The command bridge, which moments earlier had been filled with mocking laughter and smug certainty, was now a scene of chaos. Tactical readouts flickered with red warnings as ship after ship disappeared from the display. Entire wings of the fleet were being wiped out in mere seconds. "How are they doing this?" one officer cried, his voice trembling. "Our systems are failing. The ships, they're just gone." "They've tapped into a form of energy we can't counter," another officer shouted, frantically pressing commands into his terminal, trying to raise the shields, power the weapons, do anything to stop the destruction. But nothing worked. The human counteroffensive was too swift, too overwhelming. The scene aboard Valthor's ship was one of sheer panic. Communications between the fleet's remaining vessels were erratic, filled with shouts and desperate pleas for help. Some captains attempted to flee, trying to break formation and escape the massacre, but the human strikes were too precise. Each time a ship made a run for it, it was cut down almost immediately. The fleet's cohesion collapsed as ships broke off in all directions, desperate to escape the invisible death that had claimed so many of their comrades. Valthor clenched his fists, his once calm and assured demeanor crumbling into fury. His fleet, the pride of the Empire, was being decimated by a planet he had considered primitive and insignificant. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Earth should have fallen easily, its cities wiped out in minutes, its people reduced to ashes. Instead, his fleet was being obliterated, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. On Earth, General Morgan watched the destruction unfold from the bunker's control room. His face remained impassive, though his eyes were fixed on the tactical display. The alien fleet's numbers were plummeting, their ships vanishing from the screen as Earth's hidden defense system tore through them. The weapon they had so carefully developed, shrouded in secrecy, was performing exactly as planned. "They're falling apart," Colonel Hawk said, her voice low as she analyzed the data. "Their command structure is breaking down." "They weren't ready for this," No Morgan agreed. They weren't, and now they'll pay for their arrogance. As the minutes passed, the battle in orbit became more and more one-sided. The alien fleet, which had once darkened the skies with its sheer numbers, was now reduced to scattered, broken fragments. Only a few ships remained, their systems crippled, their weapons offline. The once great armada that had come to conquer Earth had been utterly annihilated. On the flagship, Valthor stood motionless, his eyes fixed on the carnage outside. His command ship was one of the few that had not yet been destroyed, but it was only a matter of time. Around him, his officers were shouting orders, trying to regain control, but the reality was sinking in. They had lost. "We need to retreat," one of his sub-commanders shouted. "We have to fall back and regroup." Valthor said nothing. His mind raced, but the truth was undeniable. His fleet, his legacy was gone. There was no retreat, no regrouping. This was total annihilation. Finally, he turned toward his communications officer. "Send a message to the Empire. Tell them, Earth is not what we thought it was." The officer hesitated, then nodded and quickly began transmitting the signal. Back on Earth, General Morgan watched as the last of the alien ships was disabled. The battle was over, and humanity had won. It had been quick, brutal, and decisive. Morgan exhaled slowly, the weight of the moment settling on his shoulders. They had done it. Earth had faced the most powerful fleet in the galaxy and erased it in seconds. The final warning had been given, and those who had ignored it had paid the ultimate price. High Commander Valthor's once mighty fleet was now nothing more than scattered debris, drifting lifelessly in orbit around Earth. The silence that followed the battle was almost surreal. The few surviving alien ships, their systems crippled and their weapons offline, floated helplessly, like wounded beasts in the aftermath of a slaughter. The humans had not only survived but had delivered a devastating blow, one that would echo through the galaxy. Valthor stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring blankly at the wreckage outside. His officers, once confident and full of pride, were now silent, their faces pale with shock. The fleet that had conquered countless worlds, that had crushed entire civilizations under its heel, had been wiped out in mere moments by a species they had deemed primitive. The realization of their failure hung heavy in the air, suffocating any attempts at regaining control. Commander, one of the few remaining officers, said, his voice trembling, "We need to retreat. We must regroup and inform the Empire about what happened here." Valthor clenched his jaw, his hands trembling with barely contained rage. Retreat. That word was foreign to him, a concept he had never entertained. Yet now, with his fleet in ruins and his mission in tatters, he had no other choice. His pride had cost him everything, and now he would have to live with the shame of returning home a defeated man if he even made it back. "Begin preparations for retreat," he growled, his voice low and dangerous. "Send the signal to the remaining ships. We'll leave this cursed planet behind." The officer hesitated for a moment, then nodded and hurried to relay the command. But even as Valthor prepared to flee, something deep inside him knew it was already too late. Earth had proven its strength, its resilience, and its ingenuity. The Empire would never forget this day. Meanwhile, far below in the fortified bunker beneath the Earth's surface, General Morgan and his team watched as the remnants of the alien fleet began to retreat. The holographic display in the command center showed the scattered remnants of the once great armada slowly moving away from Earth's orbit, damaged ships barely limping out of the battle zone. "Looks like they're pulling back," Colonel Hawk said, her voice steady but carrying the weight of the victory they had just achieved. "Let them go," General Morgan replied calmly. "They'll be spreading the word soon enough. Everyone in the galaxy is going to hear about this." He turned to the console in front of him, where the status of Earth's defense system still glowed bright on the screen. The advanced quantum network they had developed, their hidden trump card, had worked flawlessly. The alien fleet had never stood a chance. The humans had given them fair warning, and now the galaxy would know that Earth wasn't just another planet to be subjugated. As the adrenaline of the battle slowly ebbed away, the command center remained eerily quiet. Everyone understood the gravity of what had just happened. Earth had revealed its hand, and while they had won this battle, they had also drawn attention to themselves in a way that would change everything. "How long do you think we have until someone else shows up?" Hawk asked, breaking the silence. Morgan shrugged. "That's the real question, isn't it? We've bought ourselves time, but the galaxy's a big place. Word will spread. The Empire will send others, and they won't be as careless next time." "But we'll be ready," she said, more a statement than a question. Morgan gave a grim nod. "Yes, we'll be ready in the skies above." The retreating alien ships were now little more than tiny specks against the vastness of space. Earth had stood its ground, but the general knew that this was only the beginning. They had won the battle, but the war, if there was to be one, was far from over. As the hours passed, the debris from the destroyed fleet began to fall toward Earth's atmosphere, burning up in streaks of fiery light. People on the surface watched the strange new stars fall from the sky, unsure whether to feel triumphant or terrified. Earth had just faced the greatest threat it had ever known, and it had emerged victorious. But at what cost? In one of the alien ships, floating aimlessly in orbit, a surviving officer looked out at the planet below. His mind was a whirl of fear and confusion. How had the humans managed to defeat them so thoroughly? The officer stared at the destruction, his hands shaking as he tried to make sense of what had happened. The Empire had never faced anything like this before, never faced a species that could outwit and outfight them in such a manner. He turned to his commanding officer, who was equally shaken. "Do we warn the Empire?" the officer asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Yes," the commander replied, his face ashen. "We warn them, but it won't change what happened here. The humans, They were ready for us. We ignored their warning, and we paid the price. The message was sent, beamed across the stars, back to the heart of the Empire. It was a message that carried both fear and disbelief. Earth, a backwater planet at the edge of the galaxy, had destroyed the Empire's most powerful fleet in a matter of moments. The warning had been real, and the consequences devastating. Back on Earth, as the dust settled, General Morgan and his team reviewed the aftermath. There was a quiet pride among the humans in the command center. Against all odds, they had faced an overwhelming force and won. But the victory felt bittersweet. The alien empire would not forget this, and others would surely come, drawn by the mystery and power of the weapon Earth had revealed. Morgan turned to one of the communication officers. "Prepare a message for the galaxy. We need to make sure they understand what happened here." The officer nodded and quickly began composing the message, transmitting it across all known interstellar channels. The broadcast was simple and clear, sent in every major language and translated into as many alien dialects as possible. "This is Earth," the message began. "We gave the Empire a warning. They chose to ignore it. Let this serve as a final reminder: Earth is not to be underestimated. We may appear small, but we are far stronger than you can imagine. Any attempt to conquer this planet will meet the same fate as the Empire's fleet. We offered peace once. Next time, there will be no warnings." As the message was sent out, Earth's leaders stood in solemn silence. The galaxy would hear them, and this time they would listen. The stars above glittered coldly, and the remnants of the battle slowly faded from sight. The human race had proven its strength, its resilience, and its ability to fight back against overwhelming odds. For now, Earth was safe. But the future was uncertain, and the galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. Humanity had shown what it was capable of. Earth had spoken. The final warning had been delivered, and the galaxy would never forget.